It's been just over a year since Nelson Mandela's former private secretary, Zelda Lachransi, published a memoir about the 2 decades she spent with the world's most influential leader. Now, with the book in its 5th print run, Zelda Lachransi joins me to talk about Good Morning, Mr. Mandela. And good morning to you, Zelda. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
I'm going to move straight into it. How have, firstly, South Africans responded to the book since it was launched last year, and secondly, how has the rest of the world responded?
Well, I'm quite overwhelmed with the positive response that I've received, both domestically and internationally. When it's your own story and you live your own life, you never expect people to be inspired by it. But I'm quite taken aback by the positive response. It's overwhelming. It's been overwhelming.
What, if any, are some of the more contentious issues that are brought forth in the book that readers seem to have taken exception to?
Strangely, I think because I was complimentary about brother leader Gaddafi, because I gave my views of him and my interactions with him, an account of that. It was quite surprising that people were very critical of that. And I keep reminding people that these are my experiences and how I experienced someone, and at the time we obviously didn't know of what he was up to. We didn't know the things we know of him today. So that's probably the only issue really that is that has stood out, that people were quite uncomfortable with that.
In the book there are also some highlights, funny highlights about politicians and celebrities that you bring to the fore. Which one of them in particular stands out for you?
People have also reminded me, and that's why this specific incident of Mr. Mandela, interaction between him and Queen Elizabeth, people, they focus on that, and it is quite a funny story of where he comments about the Queen's weight. He said to her, "Oh, Elizabeth, you lost weight," and it's quite unthinkable that someone would comment about the Queen's weight. So people like that story. They always ask me to repeat it as well.
You speak at length in the book about your background as a white, middle-class, ultra-conservative South African growing up in apartheid South Africa, but that there was a change in your fundamental belief system. When was this moment that the change took place? Can you take me through that?
It wasn't so much a day and a date and a time I can put to when the change started. I think what sparked it off was really the first interaction with Mr. Mandela, or President Mandela at the time, when I met him for the first time in his office early in 1994. When he spoke to me in Afrikaans, and the person that was presented to me in the history books and in my upbringing was the contrast to what was standing in front of me and what I encountered that day. And that day really sparked off where the start of me questioning my own belief system, my education, my religion, why I didn't question things whilst I was growing up. So, that was the start of it all. But then there was a whole process of about, I would say, probably about a year, in grappling with a lot of things and questioning, as I say, my own beliefs.
And how did Madiba react when you told him how you grew up and in what circumstances, and that your family considered him to be a terrorist? He
was quite entertained by it, I must be honest with you. He was well aware that the Afrikaner, that was the Afrikaner's view of him at the time. So he found it quite amusing, and he was quite entertained by it, but also he witnessed the progress throughout the years, and I think that pleased him, that he could have an impact on people's thinking and change their belief system.
Many have criticized that you wrote the book for additional publicity, an allegation which you've obviously denied. So what did prompt you to write the book?
Well, it didn't start off as a book project. First of all, it started off as me really dumping my my memory, just in writing, trying to remind myself of things that happened 25 years ago. When this colleague of mine reminded me of something that happened in the office and I couldn't remember it, I was realizing that I was becoming forgetful, and I just then started downloading my memory basically on computer. And then only in 2013, a journalist friend friend of mine looked at it and she said, but I had an obligation to share the person, first of all, that I knew, and secondly, my experiences and my change with the rest of the world. So that was the thinking behind it all. If I really wanted if I really wanted the attention as people claim, then I should have written a tell-all book, because it would have been received much wider, and I could have been very wealthy with a tell-all book. But at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself and your story, and the end product I'm very happy with.
After spending near 20 years with a man like Nelson Mandela, obviously there are some anecdotes and stories that didn't make it into the final edit. Does one particular story weigh down on your mind that you would have liked to have gotten into the book?
Yes, and I think I merely forgot about it, but it's in dealing with prejudices and stereotypes. People often think that Mr. Mandela, was flawless, and to a great extent he was, but he tried harder than most of us. But he had his prejudices like all of us, and specifically one incident about it is that he continued to call a bodyguard, Rory Steyn, who's an English-speaking man. He continued to speak to me in Afrikaans, because to Mr. Mandela, all white people spoke Afrikaans. So, that's an anecdote I would have liked to include, and I didn't. And similar to that, then also he reminded me one day when I asked whether all the Kunenes were family, or, this person that we met, whether he was family to the Kunenes that I knew. And Mr. Mandela said to me, it's like thinking all the Botas are family. So, those are just funny anecdotes that somehow I forgot about, that wasn't included in the original book.
Who would Zelda Lachranzi have been had she not met Nelson Mandela?
Well, there's two answers to that. First of all, no one, because everything I am, I owe to him. There was a certain amount of fate in how I ended up working with him. But on the other hand, I'm by nature a dedicated, loyal, and committed kind of person. That's from my parents. So I'm sure in whatever I did, I would have worked hard, and I would have grasped the opportunity and made the best of it. So I may not have worked next to the most famous man of our times, but in any other capacity, I'm sure I would have done well just working hard.
Tell me about the last time you saw Madiba before he passed. What were you thinking? What did you say? What did he say?
The funny thing is, it was on the 11th of July 2013, and the funny thing is, you never think this could be the last time. But because I departed the next day on my annual Bikers for Mandela Day trip, and he was gravely ill by then, I realized that, I'm at a crossroad in my life where I need to say the things to all people in my life that needs to be said. So that was the mindset with which I went to hospital that day, but I still never thought that would be the last day. And then I said the things that needed to be said. I told him how much I appreciated everything he'd done for me, and how much I loved him and so on. Things that I have said before, but I made sure that I reiterated it that day. I'm very, very lucky that he could still recognize me, and he definitely reacted to my voice and so on. So that is my fondest memory of 19 years with him, is the fact that he could recognize me that day and that he responded.
Today, how aware are you of how you conduct yourself in the public space? I think, for instance, of the Twitter war you had over the President's comments on Jan van Riebeeck earlier this year.
Yes. Well, I wasn't aware that what I said was actually important at all. For 20 years, people have told me how unimportant I am, and then you start believing that. So, when I got all this reaction, I realized that I do have an important voice, and that I need to use that voice very wisely.
And what are you up to today?
Well, I'm now promoting the book. It's almost turned into a full-time job now. The book has been translated in 9 languages and 13 countries plus the Commonwealth countries, so the promotion of the book keeps me busy, in addition to the charity work that I've always been involved in and that I'm still doing and passionate about. And then I do public speaking. So all of those things combined, I'm busier than ever.
That was Nelson Mandela's former private secretary, Zelda Lachranzi, on the reception of her book, Good Morning, Mr. Mandela, 1 year after its publication.